Secure the Bag content is intended for collegiate athletes. Secure the Bag does not provide financial services, financial planning, investment, tax, legal, or sports agent advice or services. All right, welcome to the latest episode of the STB Podcast. Today is special for me because I'm joined by who's become what I consider a good friend now. In his second season, defensive back with the LA Chargers, JT Woods, man. How are you, JT?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, bro. I'm good. Thanks for joining me. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because I talk to so many athletes who are on the end of their career, and I've talked to a lot of guys in college, but I don't talk to many in the podcast about their journeys financially and while they're playing, right? So I thought it was important to get an active guy on who's in the middle of the journey, because I hear a lot about what guys feel like they might have screwed up or did right or wrong after it's done. So I'd love to talk to someone who's in it, right? And now after a year, you're in your second season. I thought you'd be the perfect person to have on.
Yeah, definitely. I always think of it like a lot of players at the end of their career, they always have the answers to their tests. But the hard thing is that like everybody has their own tests. So there may be some other criteria to the test that's similar in different, cases and scenarios. But one thing that I'm learning, just still being kind of young, going into the league, is you can pick pieces from everybody's, like financial journeys that they've had throughout the league. But it is important for you to kind of establish something on your own, for sure.
Awesome. So first, I want to get into kind of your background, because you're an interesting guy. You're from Texas. Tell me a little bit about kind of your upbringing and when you started playing football, just in general.
Yeah, so like you said, I'm from Texas, so we're serious about football down there. So started playing football at a pretty young age. Started playing when I was around 7 years old, and literally haven't looked back ever since then. I'll never forget one of the most pivotal points in my life was sitting my parents down in the living room and telling them I wanted to play football. And I was some little scrawny kid, and I didn't really like being outside that much. But they were like, it's hot, and you're gonna have to hit. And I'm like, no, I want to play. So that's now look at me now. It's always a funny story that I always tell people and something that we joke and laugh about. But yeah, I started playing football when I was 7 years old. And it was really just kind of something that you did in Texas. Like if you didn't play football, then you played basketball. And I was terrible at basketball, so I played football. So that was kind of like the beginning of my football career, playing little league football. Played that all the way up until high school. And then kind of never looked back once I started getting a little love my junior year from colleges. Because, like I said, football was just kind of something you did. It was never really something that I thought was like I never really thought I was going to be a football player when I grew up.
Yeah.
So that was something that I kind of grew into, which was nice because I kind of watched myself develop as a football player from a different perspective, playing the game just for the fun of loving the game and not really playing the game because I have some desire to, be in the NFL at a young age. I think kind of helped me and put me in different positions that I wouldn't have necessarily been able to do. So, that was always something that I always look forward to, just trying to help out my parents. Didn't want to have to pay for an education, so I'm good enough to be able to go to college for free playing football. So that was just another thing that, I was able to do for my family. But yeah, like playing football at 7 years old, started getting a little love my junior year in high school, ended up committing to Baylor University my junior year under Matt Rule and his coaching staff. And then played 2 years with him and his staff. And then Coach Aranda and his coaching staff came in my junior and senior year. So I played 2 years under them and then ended up getting drafted in the third round to the Los Angeles Chargers.
Awesome. So with that journey, right, you said you started playing it young and you weren't like a lot of guys where they're dominant from the time they're a kid and, they've got this I'm going to the league mindset. So tell me how that developed, right? Like when you were early in high school, like what type of player were you? Like ninth grade, what was that like?
I was really more of like a kind of ball hawk player. I've always been fast. That's kind of something that God's blessed me with since I came out the womb. So definitely a fast, explosive player. And I think that kind of helped me just kind of be myself a little bit more. I got to play the game a little bit more freely because I had the grace of making certain mistakes because my speed kind of made up for it. And so
Hmm.
I think that helped me develop a lot of instincts as the game early on. And so the player I am today is a very instinctual player. And so that definitely developed at a very young age, basically because of my speed. So that's
Okay.
something like I always like to pride on. And if anything, JT's going to be running to the ball as fast as he can. So that's me.
All right. So my next question is, at what point did you know, right, where I think young athletes will listen to this, like, what point in high school was it like, all right, forget the NFL, like, I could
Mm,
get paid, I could have my education paid for doing this. Like, was
hmm
that something as a freshman, sophomore you were thinking about, or was that something not even on your radar until you started getting offers? Like, walk
Not
me
not
through
at
kind of
all.
that.
Yeah. It really wasn't. So I was a dual sport athlete. I ran track as well. And
Mhm.
so it was really like I was playing football and I was good at football, but I was gonna go to college running track. Like that
Mhm.
was the mindset early on. And then I was getting some love in track, but the football offers started to come in a little bit more. So then I was having conversations with my parents and, you know, what's better for me. And we ended up deciding on being able to do both. I was good enough that I could run track and play football at just about whatever school like that I was going to be able to. So that was a big like decision in where I went. But from a standpoint of just, being able to go to college and get an education, the second I started getting offers, that was the thought process. It was like, how can I take this avenue and make it advantageous for me and for my family as well?
Why? What made you choose Baylor?
Man, the biggest thing was just really Coach Wall and his staff. From the second I stepped on campus, it just felt like it was home. I felt like I was family to them, not really another like just a recruit. It was really weird. Like it's just the feeling I had. I had done a lot of just like visits with my dad, and I hated going on visits. Like I hated having to drive in a car 3 or 4 hours to go walk around a school campus that, for me wasn't really that big of a deal. I was just going to be in class anyways. I wasn't going to be walking around campus. But the first Baylor visit I had was just really, really different. I remember telling my dad, like, I kind of want to go back there. And that was the first time that I'd ever told my dad that I wanted to go back to a school that I had visited. So, that was one thing. And then, just having Coach Rule and Coach Fran Brown and Coach Phil Snow, all of those guys, coming to my house in San Antonio and, sit on my couch and tell my parents that, your son is going to be taken care of. We're not only going to make him a better football player, but we're going to make him a better man. That's going to be the whole end goal. And so just having all of those things that were outside of football already being set up for me, I think was the biggest decision. And then, like I said earlier, they're going to let me run track and play football. So that was another huge thing that I wanted to be able to do.
Okay. So walk me through a little bit. You get to Baylor, you make that decision. What
Mhm.
was, life like as a student athlete, and kind of tell me about your football journey there. What was the adjustment like? And running two sports, right? Like not a ton of
Mhm.
guys are doing that anymore.
Yeah, not
So
not at
talk, yeah.
all.
So talk about a little bit about balancing that. Because that
Mhm.
was more common back in the day, but now with the
Yeah.
demands on your time, that's a tough thing to do. So talk to us about
Oh
that.
my gosh, it was a lot. Yeah, so my case was a little bit unique. So I ended up graduating high school that December before in my senior year. So I graduated high school like a semester early, and so I went to Baylor for the spring. So that was like really one of the best decisions that I ever made in my life because it forced me to grow up a lot quicker. Usually how it is when you have guys come in the summer, they're really the only ones there. They get to move in with all the other freshmen that come in, and you have a little bit of a adjustment period. It's not long, but you do have some adjustment period. Whereas with me, it was me and five of the guys, and we just kind of got thrown in the fire. And it was like either you keep up or you're gonna get kicked out basically.
Yeah.
So we were kind of all forced to stick together. We were forced to, lean on the older guys that we had around us and just take those examples that we had because we had some great leaders my freshman semester there. And so it just kind of helped us all grow up really, really fast. So by the time the summer came and all the other freshmen came in, we had already been like we were almost 2 year vets, what it felt
Yeah.
like, just because of that huge semester. Like we got to do spring ball, so we got to learn the defense a lot earlier than everybody else. And so that helped me development wise, because most kids in high school, like you don't really know X's and O's in football. Like you're just a really, really good athlete. You're bigger and faster and stronger than a lot of other people. So that's what separates you. But when you get to college, now you got to learn formations. Now you got to learn plays. Now you got to learn concepts. And so that spring period that I had really helped me develop like as a like cerebral football player. And so that was something football wise that I'm so glad that I made. And then school wise, like I got to jump on school. It was a little messed up because I was technically in the second semester
Hmm.
of the college year. So I was taking like biology two before I even took bio one. So like that
Yeah.
stuff was a little backwards, but you have so much help with tutors and the facilities, especially at a school like Baylor. The academic facilities are top notch. So it's almost like you have to try to fail. Like
Yeah.
there's so much help around you to kind of help you as long as you're asking for the help. Like they're not gonna go and just like help you around. And that was something that I kind of had to learn because you always have teachers tell you in high school, like your teachers in college aren't gonna beg you for your homework, which
Yeah. Yeah.
you always sit back and you're like, yeah, whatever, like you're just talking. But it really is like that. If I had some professors, if you didn't turn something in, they weren't telling you didn't turn it in or that it was due until the very end of the year, and you have a zero for 10 things, and you're like, I didn't even know that was due.
Yeah.
So that was something that I kind of had to adjust, but I had great academic advisors that, stayed on top of me and, all the other freshmen that came in with me early. So my first semester there was not smooth. It was a big adjustment football wise, but I definitely had a lot of aiding factors in it that helped me through it.
Well, tell me a little bit about financially, right? I would be
Hmm.
remiss if I didn't ask about money in college. So you one of the unfortunate ones who just missed NIL, right?
Yeah, I
So
did
tell
this
me
in
a
the
little
days
bit
before
about,
NIL.
yeah, tell me a little bit about what it was like trying to manage money and how you kind of lived as a college student in college and what that was like.
Hmm. I did live pretty modestly, I can say, as you already know. I didn't really do a whole bunch with my little stipend check that I was getting. Thankfully, I have a mother who is very financially fit, and she's always been on me about, putting up money and not spending things when you don't need to, but spending when you have it and you can. And so that was something that wasn't ever an issue for me in college. The stipend money that I was getting put up, and really the only thing I was spending money on, especially my first like 2 years, was gas because food
Mhm.
is pretty much given for you. We get breakfast, we get lunch, and you get dinner. Um, I wasn't really cooking that much. Now I get in the kitchen a little bit, I chop it up. But back then I was not Chef JT at all. So I wasn't really eating much but ramen and cereal when I was, eating outside of the facility. So the financial part for me was never an issue at all. But I know, some of my teammates, they did have struggle a little bit because there is no financial advisors in college. Like you're getting your stipend check and it just gets direct deposited to you, or you go pick up this big check from a bank across the street and you're, a 17, 18-year-old kid and you see a check for $1,200 or however much it may be, that kind of, shocks you a little bit. So thankfully, I never had any issues with that. My mom was always on me about making sure I put majority of my stipend check up for savings.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. And so on the football field, right, you talked about a little bit about the adjustment, but when
Hmm.
did that start to turn for you? Like, what was that like in terms of your time at Baylor, just on the field? And at what point do you feel like it started to click for you where you were like, damn, like I might have a chance to play on Sundays?
Yeah, definitely. It was kind of deja vu. Like history repeated myself in high school. It wasn't until my junior year where I realized I'd go to the next level. And then in college, it was the same exact thing. My junior year played a little bit more. So I didn't redshirt my freshman year. So I saw the field a little bit, but not really as much as I really wanted to. And then my sophomore year started stepping into a little bigger of a role, started in a couple games. Just I was really like the backup safety. Anytime somebody went down, I went in, or that's when in college you get targeted, you get ejected. And we had a couple headhunters, so they get targeted every other game. So I, get a bone and get to go in for those guys. But my junior year was when I really kind of had my own solidified starting role and I knew the defense. And I was starting to come into myself as a football player. And then I don't know what it was, like it literally just clicked. And so after my junior year that summer, I was just like, yeah, I'm going to the league. Like the decision was made. Let my financial advisor know, like, you don't have to put me in classes for the next semester, which kind of pissed my parents off a little bit. They're like, well, wait, hold on, hold on. And in my head, I'm like, no,
Oh, you
like
mean
this
your
is what I'm
academic
doing.
advisor?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my academic advisor. I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, you don't need to put me in classes for next semester because our next year, like after this, I'm gonna be gone. And so I know that spooked my parents out a little bit, but I
So
was
you kind of just
graduating.
decided on your own.
Oh yeah, it was literally like I remember where I was. I was in our indoor facility and I was just like, I think this is it for me. It got to a point where school wise, I was kind of ahead. I felt like matured enough in a level where I was done with school. I wasn't going to be able to get my master's because I didn't have enough time. I wasn't going to be able to get my master's. So I got my degree, which was the most important thing. And I just felt like it was the next step for me to take.
All right. So mom and dad presumably calmed down and
Oh, yeah.
to make that jump. What was that transition like? Right. I met you early on in that when you were
hmm
there, but what was it, the training and leading up to draft day? And tell me a little bit about what that was like.
For me, it was like heaven. I'm a super introverted person. So I trained in Arizona. So I'm from Texas, like we mentioned earlier. So now I'm across the state in Arizona. Well, let's backtrack a little bit. So we played in the Sugar Bowl January 1st, which was New Year's Six Bowl. We
Hmm.
played in that game January 1st. January 2nd, that next morning, I flew out to Arizona. So it was a super, super quick turnaround because my game was so late. So a lot of people have already started training. Like people that didn't go to bowl games had been
Yeah.
training since December, had a little break and then started training. And then majority of the bowl games are before that. Like I have one of the latest bowl games. So was already kind of a little bit behind the curve when it comes to training. So the very next day from our game, I fly to Arizona. That was a very fast-paced change for me, but I tend to be a person like my mind is usually where my feet are. So it wasn't that big of an issue with me, a little bit of adjusting, but it was nice to be able to different scenery and see mountains and all that stuff. And then the weather was perfect, so I can't complain. But like being in Arizona, I have a little apartment. I'm by myself. I go work out at 11 a.m. So I kind of get to wake up whenever I want and I can kind of come home and play the video game all day. Like it was literally a match made in heaven for me. I couldn't think of another better time in my life. But that was really not the transition going from you're playing actual football to now you're really training for the combine. So the drills that we're doing really don't translate to football. The lifting that we're doing really doesn't translate to football. It's all geared towards the combine. And so that was a little bit of a switch that I had to flip in my head that took some time. But when I kind of learned that, I kind of got it. And I went to Exos in Arizona and I really got taken care of. I had, the best coaching staffs. All the people in my class that were there, we all got along, like we all hung out. So it was good. Like the transition period from in that little time frame wasn't that hard for me, thankfully, because I had a lot of great people around me. I had a lot of people in my circle and in my corner that supported me and were doing everything that they needed for me to be successful.
Awesome. Awesome. So did you have an inkling, right? The Chargers take you in the third round. Did you have an idea where you were going to go? And were you expecting did you have an inkling that you were going to take you? What were your thoughts there?
Not at all. Not at all. I was very obviously God forbid you get drafted, so you don't get to pick where you go.
Mhm.
That's the blessing in it. So was really open to going anywhere. Obviously, I knew if I got drafted, I wasn't going to be able to pick. So, and I was hoping
Yeah.
I was getting drafted. So, but my thought was always just I'm gonna focus on my training. I'm gonna focus on what I'm doing now. I can't focus on the draft because that's not here yet. Excuse me. So the entire draft process, like I'm having people ask me like, well, where do you think you're gonna go? Like even scouts, where do you think you're gonna go? And the whole time I'm like, I have no idea. I didn't look at a single mock draft. I know my parents were. They might lie and say they weren't, but I know they were. But I told them from the get-go, like, look, whatever you see, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to know any mock draft where they have me. I told the same thing to my agent. some people want to know like where they think they're going to go, any of that. And I was like, I'm going to just focus on this because at the end of the day, if I do what I need to do, my draft grade is going to go up. And so that was really my main focus. And I think it paid off for me. Talked to every single team. I had the opportunity to go to the Senior Bowl, and in the Senior Bowl, you have a sit down meeting with every single one of the teams. So that was good. So had meetings with every single team, had Zoom meetings with a couple of the teams after that, and I really had no idea where I was going. There were a couple places where I maybe thought because I had 30 visits there, but the Chargers was definitely not one of them. It's crazy thinking back on it because I do remember being in the combine and sitting and going on a little iPad and going over the defense that I run now with our DC now and
Yeah.
thinking like, man, this stuff is a little confusing, but it's not too bad now. Like thinking back on it now, like, man, we tricks all the time on our defense, and I couldn't even really understand what the tricks was like in that small time frame that we had with them. It's super, super small world, but really no idea. But God works in very mysterious ways, so I wasn't gonna toddle with his plan at all.
Awesome. I think one of the things you said that struck me that I think is so important, but yet difficult for people to do is this concept of you said two things. You have a good job, you do a good job of being where your feet are.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing you said was you didn't want to know block those kind of things go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's so important because it doesn't matter what the mock draft says, right? What matters is what you do. And you said, I knew if I took care of what I needed to take care of, my status was going to go up, right? And you don't want
Mm-hmm.
that outside noise to affect you.
Correct.
Where does that kind of mindset come from? Is that something you just naturally have, or is that something you learned?
I do think that's something that I might have learned over time. I've been blessed to not have any major adversities in my life, but with the adversity that I do have, I always try and keep a simple mindset of controlling what I can control. Um, and so I think that's just something that kind of manifested during that situation because at that point, there was a lot that I could control, and the error or the margin of error for the things that I couldn't control, like they were just going to happen. It is what it is. Like if a team was going to pick a dude over me because he had a 2 inch longer wingspan than me, then there was absolutely nothing I could do about that. If a team was going to pick a dude over me because he did one more rep over me, now I had control over that. And so that was kind of my mindset. Like every variable that I could control, I was going to make sure that I did it in a way that it benefited me to the utmost ability. And so that was just something that I think I've always kind of had. But in certain times, it definitely comes out a lot more than others.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So you're with the Chargers. When you start, tell me a little bit now, bringing back to the finance. Now, I met you in one of our
Hmm.
sessions, and I remember you asked a really astute question that I hadn't been asked about EV vehicles. And I was like, all right, this kid's a little different, right? So I guess just from your approach, what was your approach mindset going into the league with the money, going from
Hmm.
there was no NIL, right?
None.
So you were coming from stipend to the money. So tell me a little bit about how what that thought process was changing in your mind when you got to the Chargers, and then we can talk a little bit about the evolution from there.
Yeah, it's funny you said the EV thing because like one of the first things that came to my mind when I got drafted was, okay, I gotta get an electric car because I can't do the gas out there in California. Like it's it's not something that I'm gonna do. So that was something that had already been planned out. But from a financial process, obviously thinking about the things that I don't know. So I don't know what the taxes is like. I know people say the taxes is sky high out here, but I really don't know how that looks when the numbers get breaking down. In the draft, your contract is pretty much set in stone, depending on where you get drafted. So I have a idea of how much money I'm going to be making. So what am I going to do with that? It also comes to a point where, just like you do with agents, you have to vet agents. Well, now you have to vet financial advisors. And so, who am I going to go with financially? And so, who makes a bet like a better fit for me? And I'm very involved in conversations with my parents. So, that decision also has to get ran through my parents. And so, we all have to meet. So, the financial aspect of it was a very big thing for us because, we have no idea what I don't have any family that's in the NFL. I don't really know a lot of people that are from NFL or that were in the NFL that I could have this conversation with. So the few people that I do have did reach out to them. My father reached out to a couple people, but like I said earlier, it's one of those things where it's kind of like your own journey that you have to walk, and
Yeah.
you can have people that can, provide barriers and tell you which fork in the road to go into. But at the end of the day, it's your own path that you have to walk. And so that's something that to this day I'm still trying to figure out. And thankfully I met you and we had a great conversation, and we've had so many great conversations before then. Like you picked my brain, and I really appreciate you for being open and all the things that we have, because you're making me learn a whole lot more financially, like even without football, because obviously the NFL stands for not for long. So how can I put my money in a way that it's not only working for me now, but when, my NFL career does end, because it will, how can I still be putting money aside to where I can live the lifestyle that I want to live?
Very well said. And I think you're very teachable, and you want to learn these things. But I think the definition or what wealth is freedom, right? And I
Hmm.
think one of the things people don't understand is the more you buy, the less free you are, because the more you have to earn to
Hmm.
replace it, right?
Yeah,
So when you're in a career that by definition is not for long, right? It's like if you make it past those 3, 4 years,
you're
that is your
special.
borrowed time,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, how do I take this earning that I'm going to get for the next potentially 3 or 4 years and turn it into income for potentially a lifetime, or at
Hmm.
least long enough to create the space and freedom for me to know what I want to do, right?
Hmm.
Because I think the cruel thing about football is you play it from you're 7 years old for a career that might only last 3 years,
Yeah.
right? Whereas like a doctor goes to school for 8 years to be in a career that they're going to have for 40 years,
Hmm.
right? So it's like when your identity is wrapped up in football, and it's probably benefited you, I would think, the fact that your identity wasn't wrapped up in football to think
For
about these
sure.
things because you
Yeah.
were kind of a late bloomer in some of these instances and weren't thinking about going pro. You have other interests and other thoughts that you have where you don't define yourself solely as JT, the football player. So that probably
Hmm.
helps in terms of how you view yourself and your life after football and how seriously you take it and how realistic or how real you understand that is.
For sure. I definitely say that it's kind of helped me, because the last thing that I want for my teammates and any other person that I played with or any of the opponents that I played against is for their whole identity to be wrapped up around football.
Yeah.
Because I've said this so many different times in so many different places to so many different people. We're so much more than just football players, and we are human beings. We have lives outside of football, and I think now that's getting to be known a lot more by other people outside of football. But, 9 times out of 10, when somebody, knows you're a professional athlete, especially you play in the NFL, all they think is you're a football player. And
Yeah.
so my teammates have so much stuff going on outside of, I have teammates that are pilots and teammates that can drive trucks and, teammates that can cook and teammates who do real estate. And, Nazir Adderley was one of my teammates last year, and he was just so financially smart when it came to, being able to flip money and knowing tax laws. And so, when his football was all said and done, he went and did that, and he's happy. And I know he's making it a killing right now doing that. And
Yeah.
having guys like that in my locker room just, shows me that there's so much more outside of football. And so I love that I have that around me. I love that I have that in me.
Yeah. No, that's great. And it's well said. I mean, I think we all do it in life to an extent. It's like you meet someone and the first thing that you greet them and say is, "What do you do?" Right.
Yeah,
And it's like it's so much of our worth is wrapped up in what we do and not who we are. And it's like we really should break that because what you do can be taken away from you at a moment's notice.
yeah,
And if
for
that's what
sure.
your identity is, what do you have left? Right. It's really
Hmm.
about the person you are and the journey that you're on. So that's very well said. So with that said, you are a football player.
Yeah.
You are in your second year of what we hope is a long career. Tell me about that transition from rookie year to second year and how much more comfortable you feel and some of that and what that learning curve, NFL learning curve has been like.
Hmm. Night and day. It was almost like I was, playing with one of my hands tied behind my back and a blindfold on last year. Just the vision that gets opened up just from your rookie year to your next year is crazy. And so many people have said that, but it's like one of those things where like how much can it's not even really a full year. Like how much can an off season really do? Because that's really the big difference is from the season and then you have a spring. And that jump from spring was huge for me.
Mhm.
Uh, just things clicked so much easier. The game slowed down a little bit and I started moving a lot faster. So those inverse things just helped me exponentially. And so I just feel so much more free, bonded with my teammates a whole lot more just because now you have a year of knowing them, they know you. And then the locker room is one of the greatest things on earth. Just being able to sit in the locker room and talk about whatever you want to talk about and just laugh and kick it with
Yeah,
guys that you go to war with on a daily basis. Those things help you play football faster too. Knowing that the people to the left and right of me are going to give it their all just helps you play so much faster. And so thankfully, I have a great team, great coaches who believe in me, great teammates who day in and day out come in and work as hard as they can for the success of the entire team. All of that stuff has, just pushed me as a football player as well. And so it's just night and day. I can't even express to you the difference that I feel from last year to this year.
that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, you know me, I'm a big Seminole, so I got to ask you a
Uh,
Durham question. And you described him to me before, but what's it like observing and playing with someone that's that gifted and what is that experience like?
Man, he is just one of the luckiest people that I've ever met on earth. Like you just watch him. I knew he goes to a coin toss, we're winning the coin toss every time. He has that spark to him. No, but he is a really, really, really good vet. And I've been thankful to have a lot of good vets around me, but he is a really, really good vet. And to have somebody on your team that, like you said, is that talented, but also is confident. He knows his confidence and he knows how to bring confidence in everybody else. Like he is genuinely the engine of not only our defense, but our team. And he just brings so much energy to everybody around you. And he knows each player. Like he knows the things about me that not only do I need to work on, but also like what I'm good at, what are my best traits. And he brings that out of you and helps you make that really your identity. And that's what I love about Derwin. It's always, always smiling, always, always, always going to make you laugh. But he's a competitor, one of the greatest competitors that I've ever seen on a football field. And just there's not a single bad thing that I could think to say about him because he's just an all-around great person, an all-around great football player, as we already know. He's a great father, great teammate. He could be a great coach if he really wanted to take the helmet off and put a headset on. Like he just knows X's and O's. I could go on and on about him. He's amazing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So as you kind of work through this career, do you allow yourself to think 2, 3, 4 years down the road? I know you think about it in terms of we talk about it with money and things like that,
Hmm.
but just in general, are you thinking, all right, I want to be at this place by this time next year, or are you kind of just thinking, I'm in this moment, this is
Hmm.
what I want to accomplish, and I'm going to go from there.
One thing that I've always struggled with is, coming up with not long term, but we'll just say medium term goals, goals that I don't necessarily have for myself, obviously this year, but maybe within this contract, we'll say. Um, so that's something that I'm still trying to help develop as myself. Obviously, in this league, anything can happen. You could wake up and you could get traded to a team across the country. So that's one thing that kind of is weird with the NFL is the job security isn't necessarily the best as in other professions.
Mhm.
So you don't always want to get ahead of yourself too much because you really
Yeah.
don't really know what can happen unless you're obviously like an all-star athlete or one of these top guys because then you're making all the decisions, which is good to be in that position. But I try to obviously financially think ahead. And then when it comes to goals, there are certain things that I want to do for myself, but still trying to develop that as a player, as a person, really trying to work on that, not just on the field, but off the field, trying to figure out long-term goals for myself. And, that's definitely something that I need to work on a little bit more because, without goals, you're kind of just walking around aimlessly. And so I have the short-term goals that I'm, thinking of and trying to prepare. And, that's something that I talk about with my coaches and, where do they see me or where do I see myself? But it's hard. It's one of those things that for me, if enough people tell me, well, this is where you're going to be at. This is where you're going to be at. This is where you're going to be at. And then I finally start believing it works. I had, when I was in college, coaches that say, you're going to go to the NFL as a freshman. I had Fran Brown made this entire 4-year plan. And in the 4-year plan, it said, I'm going to the NFL as a freshman. Like he sat in my house and had the folder. So the vision was there. I had many coaches tell me the vision was there. It's something that I got to believe in myself. And a lot of it is confidence. And some of it is just trusting myself, and some of it is feeling my way through the NFL as I get a little older. So hopefully to answer your question is a bit long-winded, but definitely something that I'm passionate about.
That's great because I think it's so appropriate, and I think it's a hard thing for anybody. Sometimes you set goals and you attain them, and you're like, well, what's next? So I think it's definitely an acquired skill because there's all things we want to be healthy, we want to have love around us and family or whatever it is, but when we're talking about consistently living into a purpose, that takes a lot more introspection and sometimes uncomfortability to figure out what we want and at different stages in our life. And I think we're constantly changing too, because what you think you might have wanted 5 years ago and you're a different person today. So I think that understanding and having grace with ourselves about that is important, and it's important for everyone to develop that. So I think that's great. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you. This was awesome.
Yeah, always good chomping up with you. Always.
Yeah. Well, I'll be down in a few weeks, man, to check on you. And no, I appreciate you joining us, man. And where can people follow you on social media?
Instagram. Instagram is really the biggest platform that I'm on, that I'm the most active on. JT_Woods 22, I believe, is my Instagram at. Okay. Or I'm sure you type in JT Woods and you'll see a big smile with a blue charge or something on it. It'll be me.
All right, man. Well, we'll continue to watch you, man. Good luck the rest of the season. Appreciate you, JT.
Thank you. I appreciate you.